So this video is for STATA. We're going to go through the basics here and enough to get you through your homework. So this video is not going to go through every single thing I'm asking you to do, but I am going to show you how to do a few things, and I'm going to show you how to create do files. So we're going to start by going into STATA, which is this blue square with the white squares in it. And we're also going to open up the virtual lab. And while we're at it, how about the portal? Okay, so everything's ready, and I have a copy of my data from homework 1B, at least that's what you're going to be using. If you want, you can go through with your homework 1A data just to follow along in the video, but which is the type of data I'm going to be using for the video. But you should be using your homework 1B. To make this easier, double check that you have renamed your variables so that your numerical variables start with X and Y, and so on and so forth. So you can rename one of your grouping variables group. Rename, if you have a binary variable, call it T or S or something with like we did in the previous exercises. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about do files, and so I'm going to open this up here. Hopefully this is easier to see, and I'm going to create a do file by saying window do file, new do file editor. And again, you just got to get used to the fact that these windows, they don't have bars on them, which is just really annoying. Okay, I'm going to say hello just to note that that is a comment. You should be putting things like your name, the date, the assignment, all that. Your header goes there. And I start do files with the word clear, but what that does is it means I'm not tacking on. I am starting fresh, and I want to make sure I do that. DI means display. Maybe I want to put in a couple vectors, and so I'm just going to do two at once to show you how that would go. So vector 1, V1 would be 135, vector 2 is 247. And I'm going to go ahead and execute that. First, I'm going to save that. I'm already in my OneDrive, so I'm going to go ahead and save that, make sure I'm in my OneDrive. And I'm going to execute that. So there should be a little run button right here. And one of the things it does is it makes sure you can see your whole path. That's the path to your do file. Okay, and now there's stars. It would be nice if there's line numbers, but we'll get that later. We'll explain how to do that later. But we have stars, and that just means I'm echoing the command from the file, and anytime there's something to display, I put it in there. You'll notice you have about 5 windows here. You have your history, you have your output over here, your command window, your variables, your properties, all this stuff. Okay, what if I want to just play down here? I want to display V1. I can sometimes, I'm just playing around here. There we go. Yep, so I have more stuff in there. V1, 2 is the second element of V1. So anyway, Those variables are safe, and I can see them probably over here. I could look for them. I guess I can't see it somehow. I should be able to see it. Okay, anyway, so far so good. I want to just close this whole thing out and make sure the do file worked. I don't want to save the memory right now. I'm going to go over to the virtual lab and make sure my do file showed up. Now, you may want to, you probably want to, show file extensions. So you go here and you turn on the developer options. They're already on for me. And then you close up in that box there. Okay, now you'll be able to see developer options. You'll be able to see file extensions, which you need for this process. Now we're going to go over to Untitled. It's not going to let me open this, I don't think. Okay, I could open with PyCharm. That's lovely. I don't really want to. So I'm going to go ahead. You can do that if you want. It won't hurt anything. But I'm going to temporarily change the file extension so that it recognizes it's a text file and I can just look at it. Yep, that's what I expected it to look like. And then I'm just going to rename it again. Just as so. Okay, and that's just a sanity check that everything's working. And since I did close out STATA, I'm going to have to start all over again. I'm going to show you a couple things that you can do in STATA before we get into the homework exercises. So as we did before, or depending on whether you've done the SAS unit, the way I encourage you to do your workflow here is to have your do editor as where you're saving your work. This is going to eventually morph into your homework submission. And there are alternate ways to do this, but that's my suggested technique. So everything that you do down here in the command window, if you like it, if it's successful, then you save it to your do file. So right now I have these two windows. There's a couple ways to navigate between them. I didn't have to minimize. I could just go up here and then switch to my do file. Okay. All right, so something I can do is I now have this matrix, really, this V1 and V2. I want to generate another column, and it's called weight, and right now I'm going to start with all the weights being equal to 1. So the way you're going to think about variables in STATA is like you only have one big spreadsheet open and you can name the columns. So that's why when we named V1 and V2, we essentially got a matrix, but we only have one matrix that we're dealing with. And when I say generate this variable, I'm generating an entire column. So if I only give it one piece of information, so weight equals 1, it just assumes I want ones down the entire column, which is fine right now. It's fine. List is going to happen later when I execute this. I'm just going to be looking at what I've done. Okay, I'm going to create another column called capital N, and I just want it to echo out the size of the total data set, which, so when I put underscore n, that's STATA's way of saying it's a STATA reserved word or term, and it means the size of your entire matrix of data. And I'm going to create another column of data called X, and what's going to happen is I want to just put in each line number is going to be called X. So let me go ahead and execute this and show you what happens. All right, now I want to actually view the window data. So I want to either edit or view the data. And sometimes you just want to browse it, and this is safer, but if you actually want to edit it, go there. All right, so you can see the data. You should close off this window when you're ready to work again. But you can see everything in the output did what we expected it to. It gave us a little view of this data, but I can also just look at this. Okay. All right. Other things I can do is I can say drop this column weight, and now I can go back here again, and I can see that column has now been eliminated. Okay, I can print off everything I've done to a PDF, but I find that to be kind of sloppy. I prefer to work directly from the do file, and so if there's anything I like, I put it in the do file. And so, for example, maybe I liked this drop weight, who knows. If I like it, I put it in my do file, and I'm going to save my do file, and then I'm going to execute this, and it should, when it executes, it's going to, oh, I can't drop weights, I have to drop weight. Sorry about that. Why? Control S isn't doing what I think it is, so that's fine. I'm going to run this. Okay, so everything ran, and now I've got the do file. The do file is clean. My output is clean. In this case, I have a lot of extra garbage, so I would honestly start fresh here. Let me just close this down because I just want a clean window. Sorry, it takes so long to restart STATA. There must be an easier way of doing that. I don't know why sometimes it just says no. You try to get in and it's like no. Okay, now I have a brand new clean sheet. This is what I want to see. So I'm not asking you to turn this in for homework, but if I were asking you to turn it in for homework, this is what I'd want you to do. Okay, so let me show you. So I'm going to now open that magic do file, which contains all your wonderful, perfect work. And now I'm going to run it. Okay, now I'm done with the do file. But here's my beautiful output. And I'm going to show you how to print it. Well, you're going to just create a PDF. You're not going to print it to paper. So I'm just going to print to a Microsoft PDF. I'm going to hit Preferences. No, I'm not. I lied to you. These are the preferences I wanted to show you. Header goes here. Name goes here. Project goes here. I love line numbers. The header, the logo is just this bit up here. I don't mind printing that. Okay, so then I can hit OK, and I want to put this, everything is defaulting to go into my OneDrive, which is good. My output from STATA, which you see I've done this before. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the virtual lab desktop and make sure that this looks the way I expected it to. See, it's beautiful, it's clean, it matches my do file, it just shows my users or my audience, any kind of audience. I want to just prove what's going on here. Here's my name and my project and my header. Over here is just the logo. And then I love these line numbers. That's great. And then all the output is bolded and whatnot. Okay, so that's just what we expected. We're happy We're happy this is working. Again, I don't need your output, but you may decide to use some of it in a project or something, and in that case you would create this PDF and then you could take snips out of it, or you could take snips directly off your screen. But that's just another mechanism for saving your effort later. Like, you could save work for yourself later. There we are. Okay, so I'm back in STATA, and we're done with the discussion of the do files. I'm going to talk just briefly about Meta. There's going to be more on that later if that's an excursion you want to do. But for everybody, I want you to just see what Meta is. Meta is a programming environment, and it allows you to do things that would be obvious, like A is equal to 5, B is equal to C, square root of 7 squared plus 10. You can do, why did I say B equals C? That didn't make any sense. B equals 4, C equals 5. Okay, so I can do the square root of B squared minus 4AC. It can make, why is this not working? Because I never said what B was. B is 4, C, A. Okay, Q is square root of B squared minus 4AC. And then what is Q? Honestly, I am confused. I will be back in just a second. Okie dokie then, we don't do imaginary numbers apparently. Okay, normally I was like, that demo shouldn't have failed, so what is going on? It's because I got a square root of a negative number, and I guess we're not in an environment where that's permitted, so I apologize for that. But anyway, so most of the time that doesn't happen. When you're done with Meta, you can just hit end and you're back into your regular STATA environment. So for example, if you just wanted to do display 7 times 7, then it would be easier to just do it right here in STATA. But if you wanted to do something more complicated, you might want to pop over to Meta briefly so that you could have variables to work with, for example. Okay, that's all that was about. Again, there's an entire module for graduate students or even undergraduates who are interested. If you want to delve into that Meta, I will tell you more about it. Okay, now we're going into the homework. Okay, I just want to throw this up on the screen so it's easier to find this point in the video later if you want to go back to it. I've now finished the preliminaries, and I'm going to go really into talking about what you're doing on the homework. As you know, I expect you to be following along in a do file when you're doing it for real. I'm not going to do that for right now. I'm just going to type things in the command line to make things easier. All right, so we are going to read in your data file. So we're on the second page of the homework. So we're at about the top of the second page. So I'm going to do File, Import, CSV, and then I'm going to browse. There we go. It's going to give you a preview. Okay. It gives you a chance to change your variable types. Like I could change T, but it's okay. So notice it got rid of all my other variables that I was dealing with. This is kind of a weakness of STATA that we don't have in R or Python. It can only deal with one data frame at a time, which is just kind of annoying. But you know, that's what it is. So this import command, I want you to keep it in your do file, even though I'm going to be reading your file from some different place. When you execute your do file, you will be able to use that import command to load your file. So it's useful for you, and so I want to see it in your do file even though it's not useful for me. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so put that in your do file. Save your do file. And every single time you do something that's useful to you, that you put it in your do file and resave your do file so that your work is consistent and in one place. And again, you just mess around in the command window over here, and when some command works, then move it over to your do file. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're transitioning between the different languages. So we're moving from the more GUI-based interfaces to the more programming-based interfaces. And so this is a good stepping stone. And that's why I organized the languages in this specific order, is so that you can get that feel. Now, I'm going to use the drop-down menu to say graphics pie chart. And at this rate, you're going to say, well, it feels a lot like SPSS, and that's good. But it's going to generate text in your command line, or actually in your output window. It's going to tell you what command was executed. Then you can edit that command to make finer changes to what you just did. And so this is the process for gradually bringing you over the line from a GUI-based interface to a programming-based interface. Okay, so we got the pie chart. Now, I'm going to use the drop-down menus and options to try to create a title and a subtitle. Okay, so title, I don't care what the title is, so title goes here, subtitle goes here. Okay, now I want to try to turn off the legend, and I don't know how to do that. Right, so we'll deal with that later. Okay, now label each pie slice with the name of the group it represents. Well, maybe over here I can turn off the legend, so I don't know. I'm going to just scroll through. Hide legend. That's how I hide the legend. Great. I want to label each pie slice with the name of the group it represents. All right, so I look through all these different things. I might be able to actually do what I want here, but I'm going to pretend like I didn't notice that. Aha, category variable must be filled in. So I go back to main, and I want it to be my grouping variable. Okay. Now, very similarly to what we did in SPSS, we could right-click, and there's actually tools in here to adjust the graphics. And if all you're doing is trying to adjust the graphics for the purposes of a presentation, then that's totally fine. You can totally do that. But I want to show you how to do it in the command line. So looking at this command line, and I see, okay, I've got my title, my subtitle, my legend is off, but I still don't know how to label the pie slices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a Google window, and I'm just going to say something like STATA pie chart. And what you'll find with STATA is that you will get a lot of really good help at the websites that say stata.com in them. All right, so this is not true with every programming language. My experience is that STATA is really good at this. Python is okay. Java is the worst. Okay, so there's just certain programming languages where the online advice is horrible, and there's wonderful communities where the programming language is consistent and the community tells you the right answer. But in this case, STATA themselves have published the help manuals, and it is so wonderful. It makes STATA so much easier to use than SPSS. When you have a problem in SPSS, you got to go find some video, and the video isn't usually what you want to do, that kind of problem, and it's just sort of annoying. But anyway, let's continue. So let's go ahead, and I recommend going to this one, the G2 GraphPy PDF. All right. And what I want you to do is I want you to compare the commands in your main window to the commands in the online menu. So I'm going to just sort of scroll through. There's a quick start. There's, look at that. Syntax. Are there any examples, options? Actually, I'll give you a hint. This is the page you need. Look at this piece of advice. This is actually where the advice is going to be, and I will let you play with that. I'll just let you figure that out. By the way, when it says curly brackets, it means you're given a choice, but you don't type the curly brackets literally. You're going to type p-label and open parentheses. You're going to type the close parentheses, but you're going to put the underscore all, and you're going to put name inside p-label. Okay, so here's some examples of how you might do that. Okay, so you can figure it out from there, and this is intentional. Again, we're transitioning from doing everything by GUI, that's the graphical user interface. We're doing everything by GUI and SPSS. By the time you get to R in Python, you're going to be typing everything from scratch. Okay, so we're transitioning using this language because now you can do it partly by GUI, and the GUI can give you some hints, and then you can reissue this command with all the proper options and sort of get a sense for what's going on, which is that you're actually talking to a computer. And the drop-down menus and the clickies and all that stuff is just there to make it easier to talk to the computer. But now we're going to see what it is that the computer's actually being told to do, and then say, well, wouldn't it be better for us to have full control by actually going down to the code level and being able to change those things directly? So that's the whole pedagogical goal here. And while I'm giving you pedagogical goals, let me just say something else. If you'll notice, all these homeworks, they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to like 18 rather, up to 18. They're laid out in more or less the same way. And so, for example, step 5 on all your homeworks is going to be a pie chart. Step 8 is always going to be a grouped frequency histogram. So the idea is you're going to do the same thing in all these different pieces of software. And so that should give you some idea of what's going on. And it also explains why sometimes step whatever is very, very long and sometimes it's very, very short, because it's very system dependent. Okay? All right, so that's how you do the pie chart. Again, I'm going to leave things for you to explore and to struggle a little bit with, but if I think it's something that's not really intuitive, I'm going to give you hints. So, for example, in the instructions on step 14, the test for similarity of X between two groups of your choice using both Z and T tests. So I'm also going to make you figure out the command, just like I started making you do in step 13. But because step 13 is a little tricky, I set you up to fail, but don't feel like a failure. It's just like I set the command up to fail. And so I want you to get the sense of what happens. What is the process? What does the process feel like as you're exploring the software? And so that's why once it starts getting hard, I will throw you a safety rope, like a safety tube or something, and I will give you some help. And if you're still stuck, then just leave that as something to ask me in our meetings. Okay, but that's what's going on in step 14. And at the end, you're going to submit your do file. So at the very end, you're going to double check that everything works. You're going to make sure that before you can close down, STATA, that you make sure that you've gone through, first of all, the remote desktop. Go over here and make sure that everything came out the way you expected. The do file is there. You also have the option of turning on a journal similar to the way we did in STATA. That's not my favorite way of working, but you can do that if you want to just sort of capture things in case you do something and forget what you did. But make sure your do file is there, and what you're going to submit is just the do file and your data file so that I can match that up and make sure it works. Make sure everything is saved the way you like it before you exit. And again, I would recommend going into the portal.office to make sure that everything showed up before you close down the virtual lab. So I would just double check this, and if you need to, you can hit sync on this side, and you can also hit sync inside the virtual lab. Again, if you're in, where is that button? So if I'm sitting over here in my folder, I can hit this button to try to force it to sync. It doesn't always work, but it usually helps. And then once you see all your files come back into your OneDrive in a place where you're more familiar with it, then you're good to shut everything down. Okay? So let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you're enjoying this journey.